You can see my screen okay there? Great.
Yep, looks good, Steve.
Okay, wonderful. Well, want to welcome everyone. It's great to see some familiar names and faces joining us once again for this two-part behavioral health broadcast today. Yes, I'm seeing several names that I recognize, and really great. So grateful that you were able to take the time out of your schedules today to join us for this very special broadcast. Today, I want to welcome you to Indigenous Psychology Part 2, Finding of the Future. And we've got two wonderful speakers and presenters today. Those of you that joined us last month will recall we really took a look back. We looked at the past and the history related to some elements of Indigenous psychology. Today, in today's broadcast, we're going to look forward and into the future, hence Finding of the Future. So please close all other programs, try and sit back and relax a little bit, open your mind and hearts so that we can share some information with you. We're hoping to reserve some time at the end, of course, to do question and answer and comments. Please feel free to utilize the chat during the presentation, but we're going to try and reserve addressing questions at the end so that we have a chance to review the slides and hear from our presenters today. I've got just a couple of introductory slides to go over, some logistics, and then we'll get started. We are offering 2 CEUs today that are NADAC approved, and you'll have a chance to request those in the follow-up email you will receive post-event following today's event within a couple of days. So keep that in mind as well. Again, my name is Steve Steiny. I am one of the program managers here at the National American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. This event is brought to you by our center, and we are located, as I may have mentioned, at the University of Iowa. We have 10 regional centers that are connected to our national center, as well as a Hispanic and Latino national center and a coordinating center at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. This project is supported and funded by SAMHSA. The content is developed by the presenters, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian Alaska Native ATTC. As I mentioned, following today's event, you will receive a follow-up email, which may include links to the presentation slides or a PDF version of today's slides. And as I mentioned earlier, request to receive CEUs for today's broadcast. We'll also have there linked an opportunity for you to complete a short survey for our center. This survey is very important to our center and to our funders. It ensures that we're able to continue to provide broadcasts such as this in the future. Your participation, of course, is voluntary, but we would really appreciate you taking a few moments to complete this short survey. You can skip any questions that you do not want to answer, and just remember that all of your answers are kept confidential and cannot be linked to you in any way. If you have any questions about this follow-up email or the survey link, please reach out to myself. I also have Kate Trams on the phone or on the call today. She is our communications director. She is assisting with technology today. So Kate can also field questions, and you can reach out to us here. I know that we are gathered here virtually, but I want to take a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respects to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 members of our team, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Sean Bear. Thank you. Without further ado, I want to introduce today's speakers. First, I want to introduce Keaw'e Bone. Keaw'e is a colleague and a friend of mine. Although we haven't met face to face, it's on my list of things to do in the next calendar year. Keaw'e holds a bachelor's degree in psychology with an interdisciplinary minor in Cherokee studies. He is currently practicing as a qualified mental health professional, working within the community of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. He's had many other job titles over the years. He has, most importantly, in my opinion, done a lot of storytelling, and he is a gifted storyteller. If any of you were able to watch a portion of our storytelling series, Keaw'e shared some beautiful stories that remain with me to this day. So Keaw'e is an EBCI member with lineage from the Lakota Nation, as well as Hawaiian ancestry. He is the youngest storyteller in his tribe within 6 generations. I also want to introduce my friend and colleague, Teresa Sue Brill. She has a vast background due to many of her teachings and workings with traditional elders. And she also has an extensive background working in criminal justice fields and psychology fields. She really has a depth of knowledge and understanding. She and Keaw'e have both are newer consultants on our team, but we're really happy to have them both here. I'll let Teresa talk a little bit about her tribal affiliation, and Keaw'e may want to do that as well. But really happy to have them both here, and we'll turn the floor over to both of them to begin today's event. So thank you everyone for joining us. I now introduce Keaw'e Bone and Teresa Sue Brill.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I am trying to figure out this screen sharing with you guys here.
You had it. You just had it. It was up.
Did I? I didn't know if that was a good one or not. It didn't have the little arrows.
Yeah, try that again. You'll see them down there. They're just very light.
There we go. I want to thank you guys for joining us for the second half of this, Finding of the Future. And I hope it helps you. I hope you take some time to think about the topics we're just shedding light on and scratching the surface on. At the bottom, there'll be a lot of resources for you for later. Get a hold of Steve Stein if there's something you'd like us to do a webinar on so we can get more in depth on that topic. And I'm going to give you a chance to say hi to Keaw'e here. And I just want to thank all of our ancestors, our old ones, our creator, for all of this knowledge, all of the solutions, all that they waded through so we could be. And I'm going to give you to Keaw'e.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been a really good experience for me, as well as a lifelong project that I am embarking on for myself. From recovery from addiction myself, from lots of things to now. And we're speaking on, making things healthier and better. Of course, if you said on the last one, you know this, and we appreciate you coming back for this one as well. Before we move on, I would like to offer up a blessing for us all. Wherever it finds you and however it finds you, I hope that it helps in any way that it can. So if you guys will, just bear with me for a second. I'll be speaking in my own language of Cherokee or Kaduki. So it's basically the Lord's Prayer, or our version of the Lord's Prayer. Ogidoda, kalaladi hehi, kalakbioge says the de do ahi, to go be a him. We're gonna go ihatni Elohim. Naskia si will kalasta yuk team. Tagodeli holds old Zitugi. Skewed legis kesigos kina. We old nehanigas nigoham Elohim. Tgubi we no, at leds Atlantigadi use. At leds at all walk tia go hida. Amen. Na skiwo. Ooh. Thank you all. And Teresa, I can start, or you can start if you want to, whichever one you want to do.
So I'll start us off a little bit here, just recapping, and then Keaw'e is going to run us through here quite a bit. So in part one, we went over what story is, history, and explaining here the issues related to dealing with Indigenous populations. In part two here, we're going to be giving you some suggestions on how to approach the Indigenous peoples in a clinical way that also speaks to a worldview and an Indigenous perspective. The resources we hope will help you guys if you try to stick to them. Our learning objectives here today is to widen your cultural knowledge in approaching the cultural issues and implementing these new ideas of behavioral change and redefining the negative aspects of our past into useful tools to approach the treatment in general. And now we're going to have Keaw'e jump on here. He's going to push us through. Thank you, Keaw'e.
Okay, so right now in mainstream America, we have a few really good models to look at that you can use as resources to help you just on the front end get a better base on knowledge of experience and Indigenous cultural knowledge that's out there, and it's pretty available either through Amazon or I guess Barnes and Noble, wherever any books are sold that you can probably request or find. Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 Agreements, The 3 Questions, and he has lots and lots of these books, and they're kind of like suggestions for self-help, as well as things that you can use in a group, i.e. such as honesty or, having companionship and your understanding of what that relation is. It's really, really fun stuff. And I say fun stuff loosely because growth hurts sometimes. We also have Don Coyes and Kateri Vergez with White Bison material, as well as Red Road to Wellbriety and the 4 Seasons. Most of you are pretty adept at these because it's been around for a little while. If you haven't seen it, it's good to check some of these things out. Structured programs that come from a traditional base or a way of speaking on many subjects that can extrapolate a possible outcome. What I mean when I say this is that we need to be able to validate our understanding of what's happening, what the change is, and why do we see that change happening within, our demographics that we're working in. And if we're not doing this kind of forward thinking with our approach, how do we know what's working? How do we know what's not working? What we should be teaching and what we shouldn't be. Self-accountability is huge, but as always, it's always good to have a lot of people on a project if you're working with others, to have them as a backboard, if not, to have them as someone that can keep you honest, because we all can get away with ourselves if we don't watch what we're doing. It's just good to have more heads than one. Programs that allow creativity, that also have a rich understanding of history, traditional practice, and why we're doing the things that we're doing. Like traditionally, if you were going to water and you were washing, 7 times a day, why is that? And for our people, or my people, Katuas, that we were meticulous in nature, and we did this because purity and cleansing was an everyday practice, but it was something that helped us, which is great that we have this and we've held on to it because, modern science looked at it and said, well, why are we submerging, our limbs and our face in cold water? And neural activity has become more progressive when we see this. You're learning your environment better, the way you respond is differently, and having that understanding is pretty cool, I think. Acquiring community feedback. I would say go to the oldest people that you know that are willing to share with you and willing to embark in this program if you're going to want to make one of these yourself, or if you're building up a base of knowledge to put out there, making interventions with a purpose, and having a good time of inclusivity instead of exclusion. I know that that seems kind of standard, but sometimes one can feel excluded when talking about traditional ways, especially if they weren't raised with them. So having something that pulls them in and states that they are a part of this is much healthier than, the other, and saying, I have the knowledge and you can't have it. Might just be a good idea to practice while you're doing these. When challenging ideas, start with ideas that are not something that most people would be upset about or being wrong about, like the color of the sky, or maybe the color of grass. Many different colors, and you can explain the reason why you think this particular green is going to be a viable option to say, I like vermilion, and I think it's a more interesting word than just green. These kinds of things are not something that usually gets someone so up and about and on arms. But choosing your words and your practice carefully when you come up across these kinds of things. An example of a controlled conflict is helping others out with a good thing. Yes. Do you like the way that it makes you feel? Well, yeah. Is that why you do it? And most people will say, well, no, you help people out because it's the right thing to do. And you can say, well, if you're not getting anything out of it, what's reinforcing you to keep doing this behavior? What's causing you to further yourself to doing these things and keep you engaged in helping others? If you are not receiving anything from it, this is the definition of burnout. You will run out of things to do, and you will find a reason not to do it if you're getting nothing out of it. Be okay and stand in that feeling. The help is help for everyone. In succession, all of these will allow you to be in an appropriate way to have conflict that you can control. It's not out of your control base. Can we go? Yeah. Also, very, very important, you do not know everything. No one knows everything. It's okay to not know everything. Learning that being wrong is okay, and it'll give you a wider stance than opposition. When someone says blue and you say green, and that's where you stand, where do you go from there? Nowhere. Someone stated their opinion, someone else has stated their opinion. But if you allow yourself to say, well, I don't know. Can you explain it to me? It gives them the stage to give out whatever they want to offer. And this gives them a stage to stand on so that you can be more educated in your approach when you do decide to speak. Opening up will allow someone to flow off of the knowledge that they have or that they're already working with that understanding. Now, this is good because you're building on knowledge that already exists instead of completely diminishing something that they already have or reworking something entirely new. They can build off of what they already understand, like resource for resiliency. We have an understanding that if someone is resilient, then they know how to get through certain situations. They have tools already in their chest. We just need to sharpen them. So the beauty of owning this knowledge is that it's infallible. If you ever say, I don't know about something, you have already been very honest with the person. You are not operating outside of the bounds that you know to be true, because if you do not have present knowledge, then you cannot be, taken back by something because you've already acknowledged that you don't know it. Development is a gift. And if you learn from, the clients of your community, this expands your cultural and your worldview of all. Having more understanding is not a bad thing. It allows you to look at things from different perspectives, different worldviews, and different viewpoints. This means you can have more thorough breakdowns through problems. Your plan looks better because you've addressed it in 7, 8 different ways instead of just one. you can find that those kinds of things, as it branches out of knowledge, of do's, don'ts, maybes, and possibilities that you might not have thought about before because the context has changed in your knowledge. When you look at that knowledge that you do possess, and you can find a way to have a clear line of progression. Like if I don't have that knowledge, I need to find a way to get to it. And in getting to that knowledge, I know that I have to do certain steps in order to get there. And if I don't have the means or the resources currently, I can find those because I've thought about the problem and I've broke it down. The indigenous population that we talk about and that we serve deserves someone to stand up in the best way possible, meaning try new approaches. Go into the state in time in which that whole population was to be considered as healthy. They were doing healthy practices, that they were taking care of each other. They didn't have dysfunction rampant, or they didn't understand the idea of not working together or not knowing what it was to have lifetime goals or achievements or having a purpose within their community or in their family. These kinds of things are so important. And if we knew about them and we were doing them at one point in time, what's stopping us from doing them again? What's stopping us from becoming our whole self, becoming our people again? I can't say it's just ourselves, but we need to look at the epidemiology of it. Calling things out and what they really are is very important. Because if I say that this computer is not a computer and it doesn't think on its own, it allows me to do certain things when I interact with it. But if I'm not acknowledging its existence, I will never be able to use it. This is a disease. Whether it be learned behavior or sickness that, just comes from somewhere else, however you view it, it breeds between human and human. And it's spilling out of the realm of, just humans to species interactions. Humans have caused, in general, us included, sickness. We are breaking things down around us. But looking at our environment and seeing how we are influencing it is something that we're doing on a massive scale now. We all need to do this, not just for the animals, but for ourselves. We are presences in this place that have to acknowledge our own existence and our influence because we are creating our environment. The presence of this disease has been consistent with the population of humans for a great amount of time. How long is not known, but it consists throughout all written history. This disease that I'm talking about, it is stress. It is competition. It is loneliness, depression, alienation, status quo. We have an understanding of these different words. We also have an understanding of sickness. But when we reframe it and we put it how it really is, if you acquire the disease, you will see the dysfunction, even without acquiring it. But if you see it, you have a potential of practicing it. Progression of sickness is that the person, despite all of the loss that comes from practicing these behaviors and continuing to practice it, they will continue it, further it, spread it. Interventions for this sickness is to change the entire view of the inner look of yourself. Why am I doing this? For what, the individual sees as important, and starting to keep this through readily available at all times. Like if I'm not understanding my impact in my environment at all times, how do I make every endeavor, every encounter that I come across the best and the most possible? Because I'm keeping in the forefront of my mind that whoever I come across and whatever I see and whatever I do, I have the ability to cause good change or bad change. It is my right, it is my ability, and it is my honor and responsibility to keep intact with myself and my actions. Lastly, we're going to talk about this as a maintenance, because it's an everyday, daily practice, more than just daily. It is every second you breathe. Practicing this work will make you feel good. The more you do it, the stronger you get at it, and the more influencing you become. I like looking at things as a good measure of practice. And the more you get, practice makes perfect. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Teresa, and this one's yours.
In Indigenous psychology, reframing our histories, we're talking about multi-generational trauma and grief. We have, as everybody seems to know now, this passed down generational trauma. But we also have what many aren't talking about is this innate or inherited knowledge. We touched on it a little bit in the first half of this on part 1, and we need to get that knowledge back. They talk about the 2 wolves, which one do you feed? And our people are very spiritual people. It is the basis of everything to us. So in our teachings, we understand that sickness has spirit, it has life. Bad spirits like to play upon and test us. If you're weak, if you have anxiety, you have fear, you have anything that's of an imbalance, our teachings teach about balance, always to bring the balance back, to go at the circle teachings, follow the circle, follow the healthy ways of life. So it's of utmost importance to understand that spirit might be talking to our people, whether they've learned our ways or not, whether they've been raised with our ways or not, this innate or inherited knowledge, these gifts, this connectivity to pertains. And sometimes is diagnosed as things as schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, things like that, even developed cancers, IBS, other problems, heart problems. And a lot of this can be reversed and turned around if the root issues, and you would know this by you're not getting any success and they're truly trying. They're truly trying. We have to work with spirit. And as Keaw'e said, it is every moment of your day. Spirit has you thinking your own thoughts to yourself. I can't do this. Hearing the voice of the past. Hearing the voice of an abuser, of the abuse, neglect, abandonment. And many of our people in our statistics show that have experienced it in some form or another. If not, a sibling dead, things like that. And then how does that make you feel? What did it put you through that they went through it? In our ways, we also see either you're in the light or the dark. Not all darkness is bad. Our creation and our creator comes from the universe in a dark place. So everything isn't black and white. We have to ask ourselves and have them ask themselves, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because trauma response will make everything black and white, try to simplify it, and we just shut out doors and we turn it around in a bad way. But as we know in these ways here, everything is balanced and connected. So from the south, it's our grandmother moon, our mother earth, our grandmothers, our water teachings. These are our women's teachings in my people's ways. In the north, we have the grandfathers. We have the sun, the fire, the men's teachings. The water of life goes from south to north. When you think about the water of life and the water teachings, it is Keaw'e said, we're impacting all around us. We have areas in our communities where we feel like it's just dark. You don't even have to be on that reservation and you can see it is just dark. You feel this heaviness. You can go by an area and feel a house is just heavy. You don't have to know that backstory that happened there. Some of our people can pick up on these things of all ages and may not understand what they're picking up. Because of this, they may interpret it as anxieties and things like that because the body's trying to process it. Diet is of utmost important. These diets have changed on us. And the kind of dairy and things like that can mimic or mock things like depression and take your energy away. So it will enhance anything negative you're picking up, which there is so much around going on. So we got to look at what can we do for ourselves? How can we take care of ourselves? A lot of our people will talk about what you feed. Are we feeding good spirit or bad spirit? What does this serve? We are of the 7th generation folks, and not all of us are born with old one spirits, but we are born in a time when we're to bring back and heal. So if we can heal self, we can heal our ancestors before us. We can pave that path. So it is a life work, and it's hard work. But as Keaw'e said, it is every moment of our day. It is correcting our thinking. Why am I into this? Why did I get excited because he or she said or looked at me or is proud of me? It is making self proud on the inside. Did I make my old ones proud? Did I make creator proud? Does it make me proud, little kid me proud? And not try to look for that external. A lot of our people will talk about this, what it's like to be walking in both paths. And they say it's kind of like being in hell. It's like purgatory, what some people call, because you can't live in the past and be feeding that past stuff and all that's in your head. That's your past. You can't be feeding that and living in today and then dreaming for your future with this seeding it. And we wouldn't be feeding those bad old spirits. That's their sickness. That's somebody else's. What is yours? What is your gifts? What is your blessings before you? And what do you have now? What can we teach and learn to make healthy boundaries, to make sure we're safe so it doesn't happen again? We can recognize it, but not trauma response. We don't go, oh, that's just like, and shut everybody out. So the balance again, the dance of that. And with our people, when you're looking at hardships, we're looking at, it's scary. Change is scary and oftentimes interpreted as death. So to talk about the safety of that change, to talk about, okay, what if? And then here's some safety plans. All right, so it's okay. This change is okay. And if you start to see this and you get scared, okay, but it feels like when things are finally good, it's going to be taken right out from under you. Well, what if? You know that world, you know that life. Just because you don't know this good one doesn't mean it's scary, is it? We're jumping in and make the safety plan. So to us, reconciliation with self, we start with spirit when we're born. And this is kind of a mind mapping tool that you can use on the left here. The body is then created with spirit. Creator says, oh, you want these parents, you want this life, you want this school, this job, this part in my creation, things like that. You have this counsel. Okay, then spirit comes. And then body starts to form, mind starts to form, and we have our inner and outer circles going on. Under that, we work on what is healthy development in those different states of life as well. What should have been going on and what did they really have? And let's draw the lines of what we missed out on and catch ourselves up. Living with the ghosts of your past is basically that. That is those voices in your head, whether they're alive or dead. It is those voices going on, and you're letting it determine your moment to pick your head up and see, this is my moment. This is their ghost, and we got to deal with that. I'm not feeding those ghosts anymore. And this goes on to Keaw'e now.
Thank you for that, Teresa. Now, this is something that has been attempted. It is definitely taken from what is known as an empty chair technique. But as you can see here at the bottom, there's a big, heavy caution on it. I'll read the caution first. Please be aware of stability of your client or whoever you're working with. And if you are not a master level clinician with this approach, approach someone who is and who's willing to sit in on this as you do this work. If you're working in a facility, you can probably find someone much easier. Be careful about how emotional this is really highly charged technique that is done. It is a good one. It's a good idea to have a care team, licensed mental health professional near or sitting in on this type of session. You really, really want as much support and as much cushion as you can get with this one. Undergoing this type of session, it's going to be very, very heavy, or maybe very light when you look at it, because I see this as a massive release. And it could be damaging in other ways that we don't know. So having a plan set forth for like a safety plan or a care plan to make sure that they have safe spending, that they're not pushing out big kinds of behaviors or gestures that you can't follow up on in a closed setting, like a residential setting. This is easy to track and follow afterwards. But if they are in an outpatient basis, or if you're doing this in a community endeavor, hopefully with a licensed professional, clinical master level therapist or social worker, masters, or, even just having somebody who's done this work for a really, really long time that understands that massive release can mean other things. Now, there are 3 parts to this, and the first is the invitation, where people sit down and they have, someone invite someone in. Either they're living, non-living, past, or present, that they have something that they want to say. They call them in and tell them what they need to say or that they want to talk about. Hopefully, you can gear this towards them not looking at just anger at a person, but sometimes that can't be helped. Sometimes they bring them in to talk to them and they have anger and they don't realize it until they're right on the precipice of it. So having someone that they are fond of or have good memories of is a good idea to have invited into the room. The second is being honest with them, telling them what they need from them, and having that interaction. As you can see, this is an empty chair, so it's not actually bringing someone in, but having the idea and allowing that space for the spirit of what they're calling into the room, or the invitation of that person, or the thing. It could also be that they want to call in all the bad that's happened to them, or they could call in, racism or whatever they need to look at and examine with other people present. Gives them a way to do this and to validate their feelings. The third is to thank whatever or whoever has come into the room and send them on their way, but appreciating them for sharing that space and that time with them. Someone who is grieving heavily might really need someone there to help walk them through it. This is why I bring up some pretty good ideas on making sure you have them in a safe space and medical or mental health professionals to follow up and be there to do this kind of thing. It sounds really simple, but oftentimes gets pretty hairy really quick, but is very, very, very useful if used in the right context, in the right way, and you have someone that you want to take down that rabbit hole, so to speak. So thank you for letting me share, and Teresa, I know this next one's yours.
So we like to ask ourselves and have them ask themselves, who and what does this serve? Going back to spirit, going back to our thoughts, our sickness, and what are we feeding? So who is it serving? Spirit is fed by all of the following things, like our diet, flossing, brushing, stretching. So self-care, self-love, taking care of our bodies. So body, mind, spirit, in inner and outer circles. So how do we take care of that, and what's really important? This is what we have to do first and foremost. Without self, we cannot be for our loved ones. If we cannot be for our loved ones, we're taken away. So what spirit does that feed, if not the bads? And then we cannot be for the people in our communities. A lot of us have prophecies about the communities around coming together as well, and tribes coming together as well. If we do not take care of self, how can we be for ourselves, our loved ones, our community, and much greater than that? So our mind, our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, our reactivity too, we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. In our ways, we have so many stories about all sorts of types: hunters, fishers, our warriors, going out on some kind of walk or some kind of mission for something that day or night and coming across a bad spirit, and or a Manaduke, and being tested. So if you don't know your truths, as Keaw'e spoke about our people being angry, we need to think about, as we're losing our heart, our truth. Am I angry or am I overwhelmed? Am I angry or am I hurt? Am I angry or do I feel hopeless? And get our truths back, because from there we know then what we can do and what needs to be. Here we go, Keaw'e. It's on you again.
Okay, so I really wanted to bring you something from my culture. Kaduki Dikanawadasti, or the laws of Kaduki. These are practices or ways of life that my people had followed, and that we are getting back to slowly but surely. These are becoming more and more commonplace in practice and common knowledge. Kadugi is the idea of people coming together as one and working and helping one another. Strengthen one another with encouraging words in all that you do, and all that you do. Live and never give up on what you start. So that's a big one. Be stingy with one another's existence as a mother would a child. Get that time in. Experience your neighbors like a mother would a child. That everything that you see with that person is great, or is important, or needs to happen. Like one another without condition. Admire one another. So appreciate them for who they are, not what you want them to be. Treat each other's existence as being sacred and important, because it is. No one's here by accident or by chance. We're all here for a reason. We may not understand what that is, but we don't have to. We're already here. You all live helping one another with that, as the goal, in the mind and heart always, with the thought of working together, always keeping that togetherness. You all have strong conviction for and believe in one another. Not only do I want you to do it, I need you to do it, and I want for you to do it. I want you to want to do it. I want to do it so much, but I can't do it for you. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to encourage the death out of you just so you do it. You take all the responsibility for another's well-being. That is not enabling, so to speak. But if you are without, and I see you without, and I can help, I should just give it to you, or I should do things for you. I should show you as part of my walk. Watch over and wait for one another, having that patience, and being able to see when something isn't okay. Having that kind of measure of life, and practicing all of these things together, you could call something out and it not be an upset. You could just say, I love you, or I appreciate you. Let's figure this out together. Live and support each other in all that you do. You all gang up on work whenever it arises, whenever and wherever it arises. Live united and as a team with one another. I mean, I think you're getting the overall gesture of what they're saying in these words. Being together is living together, is truly thinking about one another, is finding compassion and love for one another. Visit one another with love. Locate and find one another. If I don't see you, I need to know where you are. I'm going to come out there and I'm going to make sure you're okay. Live and be skilled in all areas in life. Be resourceful. Find that knowledge. Encourage and instruct one another in a gentle and thoughtful way. This isn't to hurt you. I'm not trying to be hard on you. Think of one another in spiritual prayer and healing with medicine. I'm not going to think of myself because I already know that you've got me. I'm going to think about you. And let that one sit. Include everyone, all humankind, however many. That doesn't sound like a judgment. Direct one another in the right way without confining or pushing you. That's not how it should be done. But I hope that you like these guys. Thank you.
So working with the individual in our ways, and I believe most tribes that I've ever met, we're big on individuality and individualism. With my people, you wear your colors. You wore your tribe's colors, you wore yours, your clans, and your tribe's colors. And then we sometimes in trade and in making a bond with our brother, sister tribes as well. So it is so important to have your true identity, your truths. This being anything other than yourself is a false face to us that could look and after a while become almost narcissistic like in the spectrum, in the light of, not to say our people are that. Some may develop a type of that borderline personality. And I learned about the CPTSD, and I advise you guys to look it up. I know United States doesn't recognize it with the APA at this time, but I would look that up. You might find it relates a little bit better to our folks. And again, it's not, and I use this word and I know some people take it wrong, but I call it victim programming. It is not an excuse when you are told you've gone through these things to just shut down life and not continue living on, to not continue with your healing, but engaging in your wonderful life and your blessings and your gift. So healing starts with reconciliation with yourself first. How do you reconcile with yourself? When you're down and out and you're not taking care of yourself, you're letting that ghost of their past, that time, that moment, that spirit that fed whoever, you're letting that get fed instead of feeding self. So it's time to reconcile with self and say, you know what, self, I love you. You're okay. We got this. It's going to be all right. It's going to stink for a time, but we got this. And you're going to start taking care of yourself. Smells are so important and powerful. Find your smell. Find your colors. Forget the brands. Does this make you feel alive and perky? Does it give you focus? Does it make you feel calm? Wear your kind of things. So your identity, forget the false face, because something else will step in there over time, another spirit, and that's how we see it. And our people will say that wasn't me, and you can see they really are hurt by what they did for so long. They made so many mistakes for so long. It wasn't me, that just wasn't me, but it came with that identity that wasn't theirs. So reconcile with self, get self back, and then reconcile with your community. We all have a place in our community, you know, and find your place in that. If it's not there, we are a 7th generation. It doesn't mean our ways is gone. Like Keaw'e said, it's just lost. Create it, bring it back. Be the one, step up. And whether it blows up great or not, it's all right. You planted that seed. You started paving that path. It's rough at first, usually. And these are the suggestions we work with our people on doing what is for them and what isn't. And it's going to change as they find themselves more. It may change, and that's good. That's great. That's the good stuff. So find your lessons in your trauma and become empowered by the changes that you make. So keep with that natural flow of life and keep that restoration of balance. Get empowered by it. Notice I overcame this. I did this. It's right. It just time's my best friend and worst enemy. I'm going to wade through this one by taking care of myself, creating healthy boundaries, learning my lessons from this, smartening up and helping my family so they're not learning from the bads and repeating this. So we end these cycles. The accountability for self-care, it is nobody else's job. Self-love, self-respect, all of this is important. So we have to relearn the definitions of what that looks like, what that is, and share that with each other. And how does that work? And we honor ourselves and each other by not losing our ways of being, by not having a big ego, going around chest thumping, well, I'm a survivor. Well, look what I did. Don't build your identity around being a survivor, or you're still attaching to that ghost of the past. You're still attaching to that event. You're still with one foot back there. So you are who, you are what, you're beyond all of that. You're beyond all of that. And you got so much more to be it. And then we're solution based at all times. Keaw'e, did you want to jump on this one?
Yeah, it's my slide. So as we see what Teresa was saying in the last one, solution based. What is going to be the solution for us? What is the solution for them? What is the solution for whoever? Understand where you are going first. If you are out of control, where is that taking you? Where will you end up? If you don't know, are you really going forward? Second, if you are not coming from a solution base, are you going towards a solution? Everyone has their own understanding of where they want to be at the end of their therapy journey. Some, it may be that they don't want to use, but except for, every once in a while. Or some people don't want to use at all. Or some people don't want to stop using, but they just need a house. Or they just need someone to talk to. Therapy is for any and everyone and should be utilized whenever it is possible. Asking what they want may or may not be a regular practice where you are or what you do, but to those that don't, it's a rapport building skill technique that is a very effective one within Indigenous populations. What does your home look like to you? Is it it's a pretty good base to start from, because this is an MI technique or motivational interviewing that allows someone to express what they want to share. And if they're given the floor, then they'll more often, give you some information that's viable for you to use in your treatment planning, your keeping everything up to date, having some goals for the individual. It'll play out in their daily life what they actually want, instead of someone saying, you need this, you need that. Derogatory terms and accepting those, it's much better when it comes from the person, instead of, you don't have a home, or you don't have proper food in your house. These are kind of things that we want them to say, not us. When you are progressing towards a problem from a solution-based model, you become aware of more ways to address the issue. Remember, widening that base and that worldview allows us to look at the problem as an equation, that there is a solution. There may be multiple ways to get to that solution, but we have one. It exists within the population. There are multiple ways to get there, but as long as the work is put in, the right steps are made, and thoroughly thought out, those steps will be in the right intention and the right progress, and put someone in the best spot that's right there for them, I believe. And the difference between honor and pride. Honor is earned and cannot be stripped away from anyone or hurt by anyone. Pride can be seen as a good thing when at its root, the classified or definition is a great pleasure from one's achievements, possessions, or status of others that see as widely admired or coveted. That's, to me, that sounds an awful lot like acquiring physical or manifestations, whether it be in achievements like trophies or possessions like a house or a car, or maybe even a banknote that shows that you are better than someone or that you have more. And this is all well and good, but pride can be hurt, right? Honor is an adherence to what is right or to a conventional standard of conduct. So something that the whole of the people realize and, take part in and say, this is right for itself. We need to do this because it's the right thing to do. And this varies among community to community, but for all, intents and purposes, we know that not treating someone bad on the street is probably a good practice. And not doing something to hurt someone else when you could help is probably a good practice. Pride can be hurt. And if you become prideful, you lose a spot in which the people hold you in such a high esteem, and it can be detrimental. But knowing the difference, that's key. Ooh, and my favorite, enjoying conflict for what it could be. If you enjoy conflict at an arm's distance, i.e., I'm not involved with them romantically, they are not my mother, my daughter, my sister, my brother, my cousin, someone who is close to me, very, very close, because I don't want to step on their toes. Enjoying conflict at an arm's distance. If I can look at it and I can objectively see what the issue is and what needs to be done, I should be able to map out what should be done here. Normalizing the behavior of dysfunction to placement of pairing associations with emotions that could associate with joy to palate abrasion. When I say this, I'm saying, even in my community, I see this, that when we talk about hard things that are hard to talk about, like physical violence that was committed by one or someone else. These are war stories, talking about talking about things that shouldn't be a good conversation, but seem to cycle their way into the conversation more oftentimes than not. We're normalizing the behavior and the dysfunction. We learn to laugh at these things because understanding them is just not relevant. But putting them and associating them or pairing them with an emotion that brings joy allows you to move past the abrasion. Because hurting someone and thinking about that hurt is too heavy to carry. Persons in this session will be able to relate to some social skills that they have. Most of the time, they have social skills and they can relate an idea or a situation that mimics theirs in some kind of way, but not totally the same. When you talk about someone's children, you talk about, a healthy environment. If you talk about causing dysfunction, or seeing dysfunction being caused as you've seen it and what you've seen for the disaster that happens, they can relate that pretty well. They can understand that you're telling them a story because you don't want them to go down that road and experience the bad. But if you bring them with tools and you control it by, introducing skill building exercises, motivational interviewing techniques, and you use these for the good, and you see a different, kind of model. It isn't ending in a bad way. It's ending in a good way. And then you say, well, what if they had done this? And you, as the person or the conductor of this session, will walk them through these. If you model them and model that behavior for them within a context of a story, they can understand, they can bring that back, and they can use it. They can utilize that information because it is not only present and viable, but it has been applied with them in mind. Conflict at an arm's distance allows for us to be objective, and it helps you view, or it helps you in a viewpoint to change how to deal with this conflict when it is too close to you. Like if it's too close to you, you can start using some of those things that you've used with other people and you've walked through people with to disassociate from how that closeness is, to be able to be objective in situations that require a great amount of emotional reactivity from you. You can become more in control of yourself, not only as a professional, but as a family member, as a partner, as someone who is trying to make change in their own world. You can use those very useful tools. Use calm, simple language when addressing a behavior that is not consistent with healthy, aligned thinking. Ask them to explain. If you do not understand, that is the biggest weapon that you have. Explain it to me. I don't understand. It's a good way to get somewhere fast. Because if we don't, health disparities are things that we need to worry about. When looking at health comes as a predictor and correlations of high levels of ACE scores, and I'm talking 4+ or higher, that we had talked about in our previous one. Within a population, certain things like heart disease, cancer, stomach issues, along with high rates of SUD, mental health issues that are trending with each other, is a high indication of probability to come into fruition for these people in their medical future. This is massive, and it has been shown through research and some of our metadata studies that we've offered up, and this still available to you. That having these high ACE scores is a good predictor, but it doesn't mean that it is always going to be this way. Healthy eating habits, along with a safe environment and allowing or following all aspects of what it means to be, a good facilitator in your health, in your own life, having a true understanding of origin and having a clear sense of purpose in life. So if I know that for myself, I will have heart issues or breathing problems, it's probably not a good idea for me to smoke, or it's probably not a good idea for me to stay stagnant in my physical motility, because if I do, these problems can get worse. Health disparities can only continue if we do nothing about them. What has been seen cannot be unseen. What has been learned cannot be unknown. You cannot change the past, but you can learn from it. You can grow from it. You can be made stronger. You can use the strength to change your life, to change your future. This is by C.A. Wolf. I like that quote because I always hear it in memes and jokes. What has been seen cannot be unseen. But it has a lot of truth, and it should for us. Because if we have the knowledge present and is presented to us, we can learn that knowledge and we can grow from it. When knowledge is passed down into the next carrier, the carrier inherits a responsibility. And that's to pass that information on. One of those responsibilities, a goal in life, is to ensure safety, security of people. Education and compassion are two very important skills that the carrier must have in common and uncommon language. They must possess if they want to be effective in life. We're all passers of knowledge, whether it be common or uncommon. We all need to do our part. The more you are educated, the more aware of health disparities and potential health risks that you possess, the easier you can plan and implement for better outcomes in the future, not just for yourself, but others. And we get to see what happens in cortisol. When it's left in your system for high periods or long periods of time, you know, these things bring up fatigue, headaches, high blood pressure, high glucose in your system, weight gain, anxiety, depression, intestinal issues, erectile dysfunction, yikes, and irregular menstruation cycles among women. Some of these kind of sound familiar in, Indian country, right? What happens when we see diabetes before the loss of limb? Lots and lots and lots of things. Part of the reason for Indigenous communities to have such a high rates of diabetes in these populations could be that it directly correlates with the side effects of having high levels of cortisol present for long times in your system, not just in childhood, but into adulthood too. So why am I talking about cortisol? Because it's produced when someone's under stress, when they're in the fight or flight response, when they are constantly in a state of anxiety or depression. These things come out in our system to help us either fly away, run away, or fight it out. And if we see aggression causing as a form of adaptation, the culmination of this learned behavior and responses to conditioning in the direction of fear, it's a part of everyday life. It becomes an identity that's heavily tied to a seed of national turmoil, loss, and identity is wrapped up all in the same thing. And when I say this, I'm talking about blood quantum. I'm talking about the U.S. government and the history that has followed. I'm not talking about anything that we don't know. The trauma that has ensued, that is taught to the children. It was taught to me. It was expected of me to know about the genocide and the war crimes committed throughout the procurement of the land that we sit on today, and so does our nation. Oh, can we go back? Oh, sorry. I know, I'm trying to keep an eye on time too, Teresa, I got you.
My bad. No, I just clicked the wrong one. That's okay.
And hearing these messages and looking at things on TV and growing up and seeing a romanticized view of someone having a spiritual connection, being mystified, profound mysticism among a general population. If you're Indian, you're so fancy, you're, one with nature, you have a spirit animal, you must have a name. All of these things culminate into two different types of identities. One is a warring type, and one is supposed to be caring and loving to everything and everyone and have the answer. This puts someone in a place of confusion. I know I was. A person in a state of constant confusion is in a place of fight or flight. They just need to make a choice which road they're going to take. Boiling that idea down, if you prepare for the future, when the future gets here, you'll know what to do with it, hopefully. But having the tools and the knowledge that you need must be present, or else we get back to that fight or flight stage. The way forward for Indigenous peoples, fortunately, and some misfortune, is to look back, not with hate or in any other side of variant of experiencing the trauma of past atrocities, not to experience them and to be traumatized, but to grow, to become new, what our ancestors would have wanted for us. Taking that understanding and passing it along as Indigenous people to have a betterment, to understand our position, our power, what we can do to be in a better spot. Looking through historical records for truth and seeing beautiful sides of knowledge that has existed in this world for anyone to use, knowing how to treat one another as well as yourself, and knowing your heart and actions and what you're doing. Is it just? Is it beautiful? Is it working? Is it working for you? Is it working for others? You have to be the one to come to these terms. And everyone only has one life to live here. unless something I don't know. And I don't know that. That's okay.
You wouldn't drop down, so I could unmute it. Working with the vets and being able to release spirits and making peace with oneself. I know that our warriors, this is something we need to understand. And again, we have a lot of slides at the bottom with a lot of resources that go a little more in depth with stories and our history and our culture on, and links to at the bottom of this presentation for you to get if you get a copy of the PDF. But working with our vets, to know our warriors, and one had that gift to be a warrior. They were training their whole life for it since they were young at a certain age, depending on the kid. And how they trained isn't, I think, how a lot of people think. It might have been leg wrestling or things like that, running and things like that, and storytelling and making of the tools and things like that. So until they were ready, and there was a council done on it with their grandmothers and prayers done in every way, unless it was an imminent situation that came out of nowhere, did our warriors go to war, without spirit. There was prayer. They knew it was in a good way. There was no political agendas, things like that as today. A lot of our vets didn't have that gift. A lot of our vets weren't raised in these good ways. A lot of our vets have found they were there for somebody else's agenda. A lot of our vets suffered things like discrimination while they were serving. And a lot of our vets who haven't been taught come back, though, even though when you touch to take a life, even a hunter, one of our fishers, our medicine people taking that plant medicine, if people waste that medicine you make, that life you took is on you. So to do these things in a good way, and they're not getting to let go of those spirits, whether it's a brother or sister that fell but with them, or it's a life that they took. So they have to deal with releasing those spirits, and each tribe has different ceremonies on doing this, feasting the ghosts, things like that. But our vets need this kind of help. They need to make that kind of peace and that kind of letting go. And they also have a lot of physical problems now. To understand, a lot of our vets went at a time that we already had so much dysfunction going on because of the atrocities that occurred to the people in response to. So they came back with these compounded states, already went in a state, went through all of this, and came back with this. And the only way to respond for many of them wasn't always really good. So they made a lot of mistakes that they may regret and are also living with. So they need to have help with that as well. And a lot of them come from a generation that just doesn't talk. So sometimes when we share with them, they're able to take with and go with that. And then if it works for them, they may come back and they may share peace. And we share with them more. And what they take and go and do with that, we go from there. For LGBTQ and two-spirited, I want you to understand, for our people, two-spirit is a rare thing, very rare gift. And whether it is a male balanced, you have both the male and female spirit, balanced with that female spirit inside of them, or vice versa. Not all two-spirit will be what some people call gay or a lesbian. Some of them are straight. Some of them identify as that opposite sex that you see on the outside. Some of them have both parts in different ways and aspects, may have total male parts on the outside, but the inside was developing ovaries when they were in the womb being created. So that neurowiring. but we understood the spirit of it. Yes, the physiological is there, but we understood the spirit of it. These folks, the true twin spirited ones, bring out some good stuff in you. Just being around them. And they each have such different, unique personalities. In our traditional ways, they may have, if it was a male that identified as a woman, there was no shame in this. And a lot of them lived a lonely life. It was hard enough to find a match. So that way you didn't match with the same clan and your clan and your gifts and all of that balanced and was good. But to find another twin spirited person that went the same kind of ways you both were interested in. So they had a hard life, but all are gifted seem to in their own capacities and rights. And they just bring out good stuff in you, being around them. More of a lady, gentler of a woman, a kind of an energy, a gentler man, things like that. They bring out different things in you just being around that energy. They're very powerful, and it's a whole, webinar we could do on them. But we also today, and I know this upsets some people, but it has to be said, there are folks who have been touched. And because of it, they may be identifying as two-spirited, but aren't truly. They changed this way by choice because of what happened to them. If that didn't happen to them, would this still be their choice? This is where it wounds is the ones who truly are twin-spirited. They get wounded by it. Our twin-spirited communities, our LGBTQ communities, you can see with the statistics, as a people, we already have very high rates of dysfunction in every kind of way and health problems. In our LGBTQ2S communities, we also see higher rates of that going on. So our folks need to be taught these healthy boundaries and not to be ashamed of who they are. They're oftentimes getting bullied and harassed from young on. They need a lot of support. So we need to help them to be able to be and to see that they're beautiful and see their gifts, work with that, work with them, and just allow them to be. So we'll move on if you have any questions or comments, and then we can get more in depth on some things. Like I said, we have, as you will see, there's your citations, and here's some project ideas that we have for you guys to, when you're working with groups or individuals, different things that they could be doing. This is just scratching the surface, get your gears going. And so here's more project ideas, a little more in depth. And then we have things about our traditional ways of dealing with and some of the needs based. And again, we're just scratching the surface. So if you would like us to do a webinar where we can really take the time to get in depth on any of these topics, let us know, or let Steve Stein know, and we can get more into this. And you can ask Steve Steiny also for a copy of this PDF so you can have all of those resources. Okay, Keaw'e, do you want to start taking questions maybe?
Yes, I would really like it if you guys have anything that you would like to talk about, make statements on, or explain further. Maybe if you have questions about things that are happening within your facility, if you're speaking at a facilitator's point of view, or if you are a community member and you have some questions about how to get started or how to approach certain things, or if you have, just personal things that you want to ask about that deals with or relates with some of these things, we are definitely more than welcome to have you speak on these issues. And we have approximately 37 minutes to speak on these kinds of things before our webinar is out of time. So please don't be shy. I want to hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. It's in Alaska, it's still morning. I am back in session with students. We're fully masked at our school, which is hard for me because faces are what I like. But I'm still getting the students to come in. My biggest hurdle right now is how to talk to the up and coming LGBTQ students that want to identify but don't know how. And so they're going through their trauma of not being accepted or not knowing how to come about being accepted. And so I would be interested in that, that one handout that you do have, because I learned a new way. I know how to do talking circles, but talking circles can be used in so many different ways that when I did this training, we, instead of parent teacher conferences, we said we could do a talking circle instead, because I think meetings can be too formal for families and they could be standoffish. So if it's more of a native name to it, they might be more welcome to share what they need to and invite all the parties involved. So I would love to know more trainings on also the LGBTQ group, because it's just, we're battling acceptance, period. So it's really hard at this age. I work with 7th to 12th graders, and very high needs of trauma. I would say about 80% of my students have trauma. So I know when I go through trauma, I can't learn anything. So, and don't talk to me because I might snap or I might cry or I might just shut off. So, and I'm 48, so still learning ways. And then I also wanted to let everybody know I did do my, I went to my first Sundance in South Dakota near Pine Ridge or Manderson, and that was healing. I was just totally like, I squealed when he ran, and he was carrying the 3 skulls around the circle, and he broke, and I screamed, like natural effect from it. And my sister just looked at me and I said, I've never seen this before in my life. And then I was so enthralled spiritually that I didn't realize that there was actually somebody that was piercing from the tree. So yeah, that was talk about traditional healing, and seeing them, many people that were within this circle dancing that had piercings on front and back for their reasons. So it was an educational moment, but I'm glad to be back and hear you guys' voices and faces too.
Thank you, Tia. Well, I would like to have, if Teresa, can you go back to that one slide for the LGBTQ2S, if you don't mind. All of these, is strength-based and being aware of, that presence that you bring to that area and this conversation. And it's being very, very mindful and allowing them, if you know how to, if you can look up motivational interviewing techniques, it's having them talk more than you and being able to understand their viewpoint of the world and what's going on, and just being able to be confident enough in your own space to allow them to do that without feeling judged. And if they do share with you, which it sounds like some of them have, alerting them of how thankful you are that they came to you. Because I know you know that feeling, and I appreciate you so much for bringing that out and talking about that, because it isn't talked about because of the shame and all the things that come along with some community, backlash and behaviors that are out there and the stereotypes. So, I would love for, there to be more trainings on this kind of stuff. And it is definitely a gift to have someone come to you and be able to share space with them and talk about what it is to be, their idea of what they feel like they are, and without, structuring that conversation, but allowing them to structure it for you is, I found, the most beneficial way to go about that, because they're just confiding in you, and they may only have you to confide in, which hurts, but is definitely needed. Definitely needed. So thank you for bringing that out, and we can see what else we can give for resources of mind mapping, maybe, because I know that Teresa does some of those, and I can definitely send some resources for motivational interviewing and being intentional of space, and what to do when someone feels like they don't want to talk because they're in that trauma space.
And the other thing too is, like, I found it hard because Christianity or religion has never really affected me, but to the LGBTQ family, if you're in a foster home and you're experiencing those changes and that foster home is primarily religious, I could see myself lashing out a lot more. So it's just it's so hard that religion plays so much to some courses as well, when there's already so many barriers against them.
To me, a lot of the historical where it's made being LGBTQ ugly, a freak, evil, dark, things like that, that came from the residential school trauma. That's generational. To me, that's where that came from. Working with youth and even adults who identifies in the LGBTQ, one, I'm so glad they share with me, and I love every moment I get with them because of the kind of energy they have, even if they're hurting, and let them know that. But yes, let's work on what's hurting. Let's work on safety issues. Let's work on bullying. But if they're youth, I like to look at our traditional teachings. When did we really start courting? When did we really start? For my people, it was about 28 years old when you finally would seek a match. Do we have to identify that I'm straight or I'm gay? Our sexuality is nobody's business anyway. So if people within the school, within the community, we don't have to, not to say to be ashamed, but this is our private, personal, what we're doing in our bedroom and with who, and to let them know that, and then to work on, to me, their gifts. So the safety stuff, the gifts that they have. So they're fluid, oftentimes what some people call fluid. When you have both male and female spirit, there's going to be moments where male spirit is more prevalent and other moments where female comes out and is more prevalent. To maybe start working on that, logging with it if they haven't yet, and identify when does this come out and when doesn't it? And that's okay. It's just part of who I am. And that's kind of the wonderful part of who I am. So how do I work this towards my benefit? And not to be shocked by it or ashamed by it, and to know why. Sometimes it might come out around certain people, and then other people, so-and-so walks up and this other part of me comes out. And is it because you're being medicine for them? So then how do I be medicine for myself? Self-care. So again, when to shut down is kind of like people who they call schizophrenic with multiple personalities. They actually have multiple spirits going on, if it's a spiritual thing in our ways. We taught those folks how to recognize which ones are good spirits, which ones are bad spirits, and when to make your boundaries. This is my time right now. So we make our healthy time and space, and the same thing for them. They can be pulled upon and drawn upon by other kind of groups around them and used in ways where people aren't even conscious or aware they're doing it. They just kind of are. Go ahead, Keaw'e.
I was just wanting to, whenever a chance arose, to just make sure that everybody knows that they can unmute themselves whenever they want to put out a question, because I know we've gotten some in the comment box, but sometimes it gets a little hectic to keep up with those, and we just don't want to miss any kind of questions that are coming up. So if you can,
Yeah, maybe we can do a webinar on the LGBTQ and get more in depth on that.
There's, I know there was a lot of comments and questions in the chat, generating a lot of interest here.
Definitely healthy boundaries and healthy relationship skills is a big thing for them. If they already have that, safety and stuff like that from the bullying, and then again identifying that fluid gender that's going on with them, and being okay in their space. But their sexuality isn't all who you are. You're more than that.
Kim P had a couple of comments or questions. Kim, are you able to unmute and maybe put?
Yeah,
Oh, there-
hi.
there she is. Okay, thank you.
Hey, so my question so you were talking about how you see yourself, how you explain yourself, introduce yourself. If you view yourself as a victim, then that you'll be connected to that. And my question is, so when I support these folks that they might not know their history, they might not be in their home of origin, how can we prompt them to move beyond what they do for a living, or just, the artificial things of what's happened to them versus what makes you you? And any suggestions on some prompts to offer that a different type of discussion would be helpful.
I always am interested in their interests, their passions, what brings them to life. And what kind of life does it bring to you? Is it good? Is it ego? Because there might be something that brings life because in their mind, this is the one they wanted to please. So, to get down to where that's coming from, but what brings them to life. And that way, when you're working with, whether it's medicines, hunting, fishing, gathering, or creating arts or storytelling, learning the stories, these kind of things of our culture, spirit starts to work with them. And you have that time with thought. And when you start to learn that you don't get to control it, it works with you and you work with it, all these things start to come and release. You start to catch yourself in these different ways, which is going to bring up conversation. And I think Jim Winkle, I don't know, he wanted to add to this. I think that's what what your question was as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. I don't know if it's a question or what have you, but regarding identity and I guess how I would put it is how this generational and historical trauma that we carry is directly connected to how I identified myself for a long time, because I was not aware of that trauma. And I agree, trauma doesn't define me, but if you know anything about the trauma informed approach, and I'm not a clinician, by the way, I'm a peer supporter, but the trauma informed approach is not what is wrong with the person, it is what has happened to them. And in our case, it's not just during my lifetime, it's during the generations of my family and my people. And I got into recovery from alcoholism a long time ago, way back in the 90s. And I did a lot of work, and it's all good work, but a lot of that work wasn't with people who were trauma informed. And a lot of the work itself is not trauma informed because we're focusing on what's wrong with us, and so when I started wondering about that, I was well into my recovery. I was always aware that I'm a Native person. It wasn't talked about much in our family, in our house, because of my grandfather's and my mother's boarding school experiences. And there was a lot of so-called secrets in the family. And I became aware of some of those secrets about 10 years ago. Then I started digging into it. And an elder had told me around that time that I was living up here in the Northwest, told me that I should go back home to find out who I am, back home meaning Oklahoma. And so I ended up doing that, and about 8 years ago. And at the time, I didn't even really know why I was going. I know I'd found out about these things in my family, and I kind of felt pulled, but I really didn't know why I was going. And if you've ever lived in Oklahoma or in the Pacific Northwest, you might wonder why would somebody go there, you know? But you know, I did, and through a series of circumstances, was offered a position in a community mental health center in Grove, Oklahoma, the far northeastern part of the state, which is where my mother was from and it's where my people are at. And when I got there, my auntie, she said, you need to go talk to Wattrot, or his English name is Paul, but he's one of the seated speakers in our longhouse. And he's the one that is teaching language and culture. And I was just learning. And, you know, I learned about all this trauma. I got to admit, I carried some anger from what I found out for a long time, you know. And I had also been angry most of my life and didn't know why. But I know why now. It was how I was expressing that trauma. But so I started learning, and you know, as I said in the chat, in 2016, I was given my name in our longhouse. I'd asked our clan mother for a name, and they found one, and I was given that. And I just really dove into learning, you know, and being an active part in the longhouse. And for me, that was the missing part of the whole thing. You know, for years I walked around wondering what was wrong with me, you know, kind of wondering who I am, why I'm here, what I'm doing here. And so that first part, finding out about the trauma, but the second part was, you know, really getting rid of all that baggage, all that false identity to become who I am. And the culture did that, and the community did that. Don Coyce says that culture is the therapy, but the community is the therapist. And that was the missing piece for me. And so, you know, I guess where I'm going is I was working in mental health, I still do, and I got really dissatisfied with the way the Western approach, you know, as I put, you know, everything's linear, time's linear, everything's on deadlines, you know, rush, 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 rush. And that's not how we're supposed to live, you know. And as a friend of mine says, you know, learning to live in a linear society in a circular fashion, because for us, everything is circular, and trying to really apply that. And I start working with Native clients, because a lot of our clients were from the tribes there, you know, and simple little things, you know, if you're trying to connect with somebody, learn maybe how to say hello in their language. And I did that, you know, and there's like 9 tribes, and I learned to say hello, at least hello, in every one of the languages. And when you say hello, a mentor of mine used to say, all you need to know to travel the world is hello, please, thank you, and where's the bathroom? You know, in any society, you know, because those language is what connects to people. You know, and when you learn somebody's language, at least a few words, it makes them feel like you value them as a human being, rather than just a client or a consumer or a billable hour, you know. And so I carried that work over into, I worked for a tribe in Oklahoma for a while. One thing I learned, you know, is I'm not there to teach them my culture. You know, I tell my story of how I learned about my culture. I encourage the people I work with to learn about theirs. So I think that's really the key for me, is is that pure approach. I'm not, you know, I don't want to push anybody any direction they don't want to go, and meet people where they're at and just tell my story that way. And hopefully maybe just spark somebody to say, well, you know, if he could get well through learning about culture, maybe I can too. You know, and so I just wanted to say that, and right now I am currently, I got caught up in a hurry up for the last month, and I can't do it. I cannot do it. I just told my supervisor, I can't do this. You know, either let me work the way I work best, or we'll have to part ways, you know, because I will not compromise anymore what gives me wellness and health and meaning. So anyway, that's enough out of me. Yahweh.
I want to encourage the time we have remaining, encourage anyone who would like to unmute and comment or share or have a question for the presenters. Thank you very much, Jim. Yahweh, appreciate that. Yeah, we open the floor again for questions. There's been some great comments. I wanted to see if Nora C. wanted to comment.
Hi, this is Nora. I'm not sure if I'm on. Oh, wait. Okay. Don't know if you can see me, but I really appreciate the presenters and all the knowledge that they shared. You know, it's all, I always like when I can fill in the medicine wheel with the information, and that's one of my big teachings that I use for as a counselor and just in my life, you know, figuring out what's missing and what I need to fill it in. You know, talking about you know, I understand a lot of these, you know, the concepts that they were talking about, and you know, it's just really learning to respect each other and mostly ourselves. You know, sometimes we get too high of expectations from other people, and it really causes the, you know, those conflicts, and so, you know, we live half our life growing up trying to meet expectations and not knowing what we want. So, you know, it is a lifelong, endeavor keeps coming in my head, but, you know, process to figure out, you know, who we are. And the reason is because we change, and we don't stay this one person that we think we want to be. We're going to keep developing and growing through stages. I should be an elder, and I you know, and that might sound funny, but I took my granddaughter to a basketball tournament this weekend, and I said, oh, we could park in the elder parking, and she said, oh no, you can't, Grandma, they won't think you're an elder. And so, you know, we get this concept of what an elder is, and So that's what I mean. It's like, okay, I don't fit in that box either. So, and it just being, grateful, being in your, just loving yourself and, what do they say? Feeling comfortable in your own skin and your own self. And right now I'm in the process of preparing for a vision quest, and anything can happen. And someone was asking me about that too, and we've had so many deaths here on our reservation. It's just the COVID, the suicides, just regular illness, one after the other. And you kind of keep thinking, okay, I'm next, or when's my number coming up? And I did lose my son about 13 years ago to suicide, and it's hard to get over that. I don't think you ever do, because like I said, we change, and some things change you forever, and that piece is missing. So I kind of shocked myself, because when they asked me why I'm doing that, I said to find a reason to live. And it's not that I want to die. I just I need a guidance for what direction I need to go right now. And but yeah, my story's really long one. But yeah, it takes a lifetime to figure out, how we feel comfortable, and just respecting each other for who we are and how we are. And I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Nora, thank you for commenting, and thank you for sharing with us your story and your hardships and what you're going through. And I really appreciate your space and your intentionality to come here today to share that with all of us. I know that sometimes it's not easy to do that, and even if it takes forever to talk about it, or a lifetime, I'm glad you're sharing. I'm glad you're engaging with us. And I do think that we could offer some things to help with how to go forward with some things, and I definitely want to see you on more of these. I think that your energy is needed here, and I'm really grateful that we've got to experience it today. And just my heart goes out to you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for allowing us to see a glimpse of your life and what's going on. Thank you so much, Nora. I'm sorry to hear about some of it. Thank you.
To me, when we go through some horrible, horrible times in our lives and get put through it, I liked when I was young, and I've done this with people over the years since, looking at what they call trauma response. What's a textbook reaction to things? And catching ourselves in it, saying, I'm not going to be that statistic. I'm not going to be that one. Why would I respond this way? And learn from it. And that way we can gauge where we're at, if we need help, if we're in a dangerous situation of thinking, of being. How can I empower myself to get better? Can I eat healthier? What does these foods do to me? And so anything to help me come up out of this feeling, this thinking, this being, what can I reconnect with that brings me true joy? What really is me? Is that me? What happened to me? Do the people out there when I go to the store that don't know me see my situation, or do they just see this person? And I have to remember my truths. Those are my truths. So I can't let what's in my head, what I remember, what I went through, take that away. Safety is a big, big, big thing. healthy boundaries and safety. How can I prevent this from happening again? If I can, what can I do? That's one of the biggest things. Diets are so important. That's one of the first things they took away from all of our people and brought us Soldier Fort rations. If you do food allergy testing, you would be shocked to see what dairy does to our people. You either turn into grumpy puss or you get super sad really quick just by that little bit under the skin, even if you have just minor sensitivities to it. But then it creates such health problems that we're dealing with today, not just what's mimicking mental health. So if you already have existing problems, it's enhancing it. So what can we do differently? When we eat things of our cultural foods without creaming it or frying it, but try to cook it in a healthy way, have fun with it, things like that. And our recipes were always unique. How we made or quilled or anything that we did was always unique. Each person's style could be seen. Oh, this is so and so's. I could tell by their work. I could tell by this. I could taste it. This is their style of cooking. So to come up with recipes that you can have fun with it, eat healthy, eat clean, do everything you can for yourself to empower yourself, but where you find joy, start logging it. There's times where what you go through becomes so heavy in mind that it takes you away from everything you already know. So log down what is bringing you joy. Hey, wait, this brought me such joy. I'm going to give this a try again tonight. I'm going to work on this project, something like that. I hope that helps a little bit. But yes, when we eat, we're connecting. And when I eat wild rice, when I eat any of our root plants, things like that, or deer meat, I can feel the spirit of that animal. I'd rather feed good spirit and reconnect in those circles than what happened in my past back here. I hope that helps. If we can do anything that of more of a webinar that's more in depth on any of these topics, let us know, or let Steve Steiny know, and that way we could really give the right amount of time to it that's needed.
But we're approaching the top of the hour, and I know we just getting warmed up here, but I want to honor everyone's scheduled times. And yes, we are talking about perhaps an October behavioral health webinar. So I did post Teresa and Keaw'e's emails in the chat earlier. If you want to reach out to them with ideas, or you can certainly reach out to me here at the center, and we can start to take that into some consideration. So we've got about 3 minutes left. I thought perhaps we would want to end in a good way as we part our time together here. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's really been great to see some new faces and, of course, some familiar faces and voices on this call. So thank you, everyone. Keaw'e or Teresa, do we want to close with a blessing or some thoughts?
I'm good with whatever Teresa wants to do. I could, say another one, or we could, utilize Jim, because I know he's really good at prayer and offering things.
I just want to give
If he wanted.
thanks to the old ones and the four winds and our creator and all of our Manaduk for all that they gave us and for being here. And I hope that they'll be with you and help guide all of this so we can get down to the real needs, the biggest barriers, the biggest issues, and help utilize our culture to find our solutions and start turning things around. So the courage to come forth and say, this is the biggest barrier. What can we do? And put all of our minds together, all of our teachings together, and find a way. And yes, Jim, if you would.
Okay. First of all, I want to say Yawagoa Swagwego. That means many thank yous, big, huge thank you to both of you, Keaw'e and Teresa, and everybody that is on this call. I know for myself that it fed my spirit. So for that, I want to say Nyawago. And I will say what we call a half-hearted Ganohan yoke. We say the long one at the beginning of the thing, and we say what we call the half-hearted, the short version at the end of any gathering or what have you. And basically, it is just our way of acknowledging our connection to, our relation to, and giving thanks to all the things in the creation that give us life. So, and I'm going to say it in the Keaw'e language, and I'll say Swatwego, Swati Hosios, Ningawaka, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Angweso A, the Twitter Nahon Yone, at the Naha Owejde, the Twitter Nahon Yone, I don't want to rock gate on a Vatrani, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Wyoniata, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Oriharoni, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Gadino, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Onaka Onyo, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Ganheko, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Deo Owenye, the Tina Hon Yone, Etiso Hatona Dagis, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Sarwesha, Adika, Gatwakis, the Tina Hon Yone, Etiso Aso Henka Anidagis, the Tina Hon Yone, Odisa Dacia, the Tina Hon, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Sedwa Goas Ganyatio, the Twitter Nahon Yone, Agi, Agaigadak, the Atinia Hon Yon, that's one in the Hon Yone, Songoy Diso, Danato, Nagakwani, Agi, Agaigadak, Ganohanyo, Danato. So basically, what I just did was give thanks to all those things and acknowledge them, our Mother Earth, our medicines, our plants, our fruits, the trees, the animals, the waters, the three sisters, the winds, our grandfathers, the thunders, our older brother's sun, our grandma moon, our most distant cousins, the stars, what we call the four beings that hold up the creation and the creator. And the last part is just saying that's all, that's the best I can do. That's all I can think of to give thanks for today. And that's my favorite part, because that's all that's asked any day of us, is just to do the best we can do, you know. And so, yeah, that's what we call our Ganohanyo, the Thanksgiving speech. Yawagoa.
Miigwech Jam. And I think this is a good example here that if I remember right, Keaw'e's tribe and my tribe in Anishinaabe, we got some bad history, some bad blood between us as peoples with Jim, with his people. And so to have Jim come in and do prayers for us to come together, for us to put that behind and not even see it when we see each other, I think that's huge. And it sets a great example of our histories and moving forwards in the ways that we're supposed to be and should be and could be, and what we're missing out on if we don't. We're missing out on Jim.
Well, just on that note, I will say that we have a word for Cherokee in our language. It means cousins. And we have the one dish with one spoon wampum with the Anishinaabe. If anybody is familiar with that, we had been warring over territory and resources, and we made a certain territory around Toronto it's called the one dish. And the wampum says that we share this territory and we share the resources, and if one group is having a bad year, they can have more of those resources. And that treaty was made a long time ago, like 1100 and 1100s ADs, and it's never been broken. It stands to this day. So,
we're kind of fighting over it up there right now.
Well,
Six Nations, that I forget her name, but she was the voted in leader before Kenny Hill's nephew, who's leadership now.
That's the band council people.
Yes, it is. And they forgot. But when you see the traditional elders, they remember our wampum, and we're supposed to be invited to the councils there. And yes, but we haven't had no hunting or fishing up there, Mississauga. The credit we fight, but I have cousins that are half his tribe. is even though we have this history, we ended up marrying in. The government put these warring tribes, mine and what they call 6 nations. It was the 5 nations together, and our reserves like this, right up next to each other, and it backfired. We ended up marrying within each other.
But, okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's been a great broadcast. Signing off now. Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and stay healthy. We have a September behavioral health webinar coming up next month. We're going to have natives on a panel, Native Americans, Alaska Natives on a panel sharing about their recovery in honor of Recovery Month and in honor of Indigenous people. So tune in for that. Look for that announcement on your listserv, and we're happy to have you then. Goodbye, everybody.
Origia.
Nagoya,
Tokcha.
Amapi.